everyone. So in the past videos, we looked into kind of getting started with the basics, moving things around, drawing basic shapes. And in the next couple videos, we're going to be looking at what it's like to begin drawing in CAD, using geolocation, and the beginnings to making a 3D model from a plan draft. So let's get started. So to start out with any project in 3D, what you want to do is probably start in AutoCAD. So by this point in the program, you should know a little bit about AutoCAD, but the most important thing to know from CAD to SketchUp is to draw in as less many layers as you can. It's actually, for SketchUp, it's a little more helpful to have less layers, as they're less likely to be more things you don't need. And then when you're drafting your plan in AutoCAD, just make sure that you're drafting very accurately and that you're not having more line work than you need, and everything is drawn out to the right dimensions. And you can do that by overlaying aerials or using existing plans if you have them. So once you have your base to a point where you need it, you'll go to File and just make sure it's saved as a DWG. So we'll go to Save As. And then I'm going to save it here in Row Street as CAD to SketchUp Row Street. And as of right now, it's better to save it as a older file version, as it is more likely to be accepted into SketchUp. So I'm going to save this as an AutoCAD 2013 drawing. Once we have that saved, we're going to open SketchUp in feet and inches for our units. And then we're going to go up here to File, Import, and then we're going to find that AutoCAD drawing that we just saved. So in this case, I'm going to open up CAD to SketchUp Row Street and then select Import. And it'll import our CAD file in a group. And we can't see the line work right now. That's because it's hiding in the aerial. So I'm going to double click. And then I'm just going to delete this aerial out for now. Actually, I'll hide it for now so we can keep it. And then my line work will be right here. Now, it's recommended at this point that if you're not so comfortable with SketchUp, with moving the camera around and panning, you might want to practice a bit more to make sure you have that down, as well as creating faces, shapes, and that sort of thing. At this point, we need to make some faces on our geometry. So what we can do is select the pencil tool and just kind of start going over some of these lines, and it will start regenerating some of these lines and faces. And what you'll notice is as I kind of work through these, that as I redraw these lines, they don't always reappear. So what we can do is download a quick extension to help speed up this process. That extension is called Make Face. So what is an extension? An extension is more tools that people who use SketchUp have added into the design software. So SketchUp only gives you so many tools to start out with. But what people have done over the course of however SketchUp has been available is made their own custom tools that you can then upload to SketchUp's extension warehouse. So in this case, we're going to download a extension called Make Face. So what we'll do is open up the extension warehouse, this button here. And then we're going to search for Make Face. And it's this one here by S4U Make Face 5. And then we'll just hit install. As you can see, it added this toolbar onto our window, and I'm just going to kind of clip it down at the top of my toolbar. I like to separate my tools from the left side being the tools that SketchUp gives you, and then having my top bar as extensions that I've downloaded over time. So what we'll do now is I'm just going to go ahead and delete this face out. I'm going to highlight everything and then hit the Make Face button. Now, as of right now, it does ask for an email address and an authorization code because I want to say this is a paid extension. But if you hit OK, it will do it anyways. But that's just a shortcut for now. It may not work in the future. So after that, you can see that my lines all have faces on them, and that the shapes are, or the faces are within the shapes. But if I click on my street face, you can see that it's selecting the sidewalks as well, and that means there's a gap somewhere in my line work that's not entirely closed. So what I'm going to do now is go and search through my line work and see if I can find where this gap is. All right, so this is one of the minor problems with SketchUp is sometimes it won't create a face because you have a tiny line that is a little bit too far than it should be. And if we zoom in on this line here, you can see this tiny little line right here is what's keeping us from having a proper face on this flat plane. So I'm going to click it, delete it out, and then regenerate the geometries through here. And you can see that it's repaired my face, and I can start drawing along this face to see where I have broken geometry that's not letting me generate a face for this. So another one of the geometries was right here. You can see that this area here wasn't entirely connected through this line. So what I'm going to do is just take my line tool and just fill that gap. And that's repaired that face. All right, now that I've gone through my model and repaired some of the geometries, we can see that we have individual faces for each different geometry. So just a note that when you bring AutoCAD line work into SketchUp and start to make faces on it, sometimes it just doesn't always work, and you do have to have a careful eye to watch out for geometries that may be a little too long or doesn't actually connect to the next line all the way. So there might be a gap in some of the geometries. So in order, a way to fix this is just make sure that you're really accurately drawing in AutoCAD and that you have a good eye when you come into SketchUp to fix these minor issues that may have come along with the import of the file itself. So moving on from here, another way to kind of draw plans like this in SketchUp is to use something called Geolocation. Now, typically we would start to draw site plans in AutoCAD, but not everyone has access to AutoCAD. So what we can do, if that's your case, is we can go to File, Geolocation, Add Location, and then we'll just zoom into the site that we're looking at. So in this case, we're looking at the Jacob Science building on Rose Street in the University of Kentucky. So I'll just zoom into it here. And I'm going to choose about right here. And then I'm going to select my image provider. So I'm just going to choose Digital Globe. And then I'm going to bring this all the way to the right so we have more tiles and higher resolution. And then I'm going to bring this box down to right about here. And then select Import. And what it'll do is bring in a scaled aerial imagery of your site facing north. And when it comes in, it comes in as a locked layer. So what we can do is right-click it and hit Unlock. And now we have aerial imagery that we're able to draw on top of and make a site plan. So what you would do from here is start using the line and rectangle tool and probably rotate your axis to whichever building you're drawing on and just start to draw out some of the sidewalks, buildings, streets that make up this site. In this case, we already have this data, but this is a good option if SketchUp is going to be your starting point instead of AutoCAD. So whether you start in SketchUp or AutoCAD, you should end up with something like this. And from here, I'm going to recolor some of the elements that make up this plan, as well as group things that are similar so that our model has a good hierarchy and everything fits together sort of like a puzzle. So to start off, I'm going to actually start to color some of these buildings, streets, and sidewalks. So for now, I'm going to color our buildings first. So I'm going to select the paint bucket, and it'll open up the materials tab. And then I'm going to give them I'm going to give it a light gray. So I'm going to just color all of my buildings this material. You can do that by just selecting a material and selecting the faces themselves. Yep, looks good. And then I'm going to give my sidewalks a bit of a darker gray. Yep. And then I'm going to give the streets, I'm going to give it this color here, a little bit off the darkest black. And then from there, I'm going to group them. So what I'll do is group similar objects. So I'm going to go through here and hold Shift and double click all of my faces for the buildings. Now, there could be an easier way to make a hierarchy for a model, but this is kind of just the way that I've always gone for it. So once I have all my buildings selected, I'm going to right click on one of the buildings and hit Make Group. So now all of our building surfaces are in a group together. And then I'm going to do the same for my street and my sidewalks. Looks like I missed a few here. That's okay. Oops. So it looks like I accidentally triple clicked, and in this case, I would just have to restart. These things do happen. All right, so I've got all my sidewalks selected. Now I'm going to group them. And then I'm going to go back in the group and re-add the color to these ones I missed. There we go. And then finally, I'm going to group my streets, lines, and face together. So now all of our pieces in our model are grouped together and kind of fit together like a puzzle piece. So if I were to select the buildings and move them up, you can kind of see what I mean by that. After I went through and grouped everything together, then I went inside each group and extruded the building faces. So you can do that by double clicking in the group, using the push-pull tool, and then bringing up the tools to match the height, the building heights that are on the site. You can do the same thing with the sidewalks as well. I went to the group and pulled them up 1/2 foot or 6 inches. So this is how you make a quick, simple, and easy study model. But the same kind of concept would work for a drafted plan site for a design in Studio or any other class. So feel free to take this and use it in other projects. All right, so that wraps up SketchUp Part 4, where we talked about importing CAD files, geolocation, and plan drafting. So now that we have this plan constructed, we can look into the next video with what we can do with it with scenes. Making sections out of it, and a little bit on how we can export this file and use it in the design process. So thanks, guys. Reach out to us if you have questions. Thanks.